there's a lot of things for sure. I hope people are able to take away a lot of things, but I think the big one is how's it going?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Good, good. Nice to meet you.
I'm Alex with dudeIWatchThat.com, and we'll be starting our hot docs coverage. So it's a pleasure to meet you.
Cool.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about your film Gray Roads today.
Hmm.
And I would just like to start off by allowing you to introduce yourself, what the movies or the doc's about, and just your inspiration behind making the documentary.
Yeah, my name is Jesse McCracken, and I directed, shot, and edited Gray Roads. And it's a very personal film about myself going back to my hometown where I grew up and sort of documenting its troubles and changes over the past many years, as well reconnecting and sort of hanging out with my only family left in town, who are my dad and grandfather, and sort of examining these changes and changes within their lives as well, that happen, sort of have happened over the past few years. And the inspiration has been on my mind for many years. I've always loved the small town I came from, and thought it was quite unique, and I've just seen it sort of change quite dramatically over the past 10 years or so, and I thought there was a story there. I know it's happening to a lot of other small towns as well, but it was quite a sense of loss that I got when I was seeing these things happen in this town that I had grew up in, that I had known had such a strong sense of community, and I had known so many people. Um, so there were some bigger changes happening a few years ago, where the school was almost closed, as well as the senior citizens home. And it really felt like if there was any time to start filming, it was now, because it looked not, the future didn't look good for the town, and it was getting quite worrisome. And also at that time, my only family left were my dad and grandfather, and so there was something there that I was curious about as well, specifically sort of men growing up together in small towns, and these three generations of men. So I thought there could be something interesting to examine there and talk about, that hopefully other people could relate to.
So Markdale is a small town outside of Toronto, Ontario. How long has Markdale been around for?
Probably, I think it was the late 1800s it was founded. Armstrong, I think, was the name. He was one of the first big settlers here, and he had a few plots of land in the town, and it was an Aboriginal land originally, and slowly, once settlers came in, plots of land were starting to be sold, and yeah, I think it was around the late 1800s where it first became founded.
That's a really long time for a town, and it's amazing that the town's still around today. With over 100 years of history, clearly many changes have happened. So, how was Markdale able to adapt to all these changes throughout the years?
Yeah, I think the biggest things that we've seen happen have been in those last sort of 15 years, maybe even 20 years, where factories slowly started closing down. And if for anywhere, especially small towns, it's getting harder for small businesses to run. And I think for a long time, people didn't really know how to adapt, and people were sort of clinging on to the past a bit, and wondering, what happened to the way Markdale used to be, this booming town, where it was quite a booming town for the area. Definitely, of all the small towns around, it was one of the busier ones for sure. And it just seemed like it sort of kept growing, and then it got lost in the fray of many small towns that just can't, without too many industries going, it just started struggling. And yeah, I think a lot of the people in the community struggled with that for years, and just felt a sense of grief about it, and didn't know what to do. But as things got a little more dire recently, and new people, younger people were coming into town as well, and people who had been in the community for years really started fighting for its future and really started being more vocal about it and trying to be more active within council and the community. And they found a way to adapt. Ultimately, I think, as you see in the film, it's turning into uh, it's adapting into a town that's hopefully going to be able to bring in younger people from all over, and thrive in some sort of way. And they're doing that by building more houses. They're putting some bigger box stores in here, but also there's some younger people in town who are fighting for that old feeling of community as well by putting in smaller businesses and keeping connected with the smaller businesses and the people in town and trying to cultivate a new sense of community, which is really great to see. And I think people are adapting well. I think it sort of depends on the person you're talking to. As you see with my dad and grandpa, they're two different perspectives on it, but they're all finding ways to slowly adapt to it because you kind of have to. There's no other way around it if you want the town to stay alive.
So do you think that Markdale was able to rebound?
Yeah, I do. I do think they've been able to figure it out a little bit, and it's going to be an interesting case study. I think Markdale's it is sort of special in the sense that it is only 2 hours from Toronto, and as housing prices get more and more expensive in cities, people, and especially with people working from home during the pandemic, they're starting to buy property up here and slowly move up here more. And so I think Markdale's lucky that it has that close proximity. The world is getting smaller, and Markdale doesn't feel too far away anymore for a lot of people. So I think other small towns who aren't as lucky to be near like a metropolis will struggle. But I think Markdale's an interesting case study where they have that anchor from people moving up from the city, and as well as the luckiness of younger people who have stayed behind here, people who I knew from high school and things like that, and are fighting for the community. So yeah.
So were you born and raised there? And what was your childhood like living in a small town?
Yeah, I was born and raised there, and it was great. I lived in the town for maybe 13 years or something, and then we lived on a farm 10 minutes outside of the town, and both were incredible experiences that, especially living on a farm, was incredibly inspiring for me, for photography and visuals and things like that. Just being able to wander around a big property and forests and fields, it was amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better upbringing in that sense. And yeah, there was this really special feeling of community, of knowing so many people around the town, and then them knowing your parents and things like that, and that was really great. And Yeah, I think I feel blessed for sure to be brought up in this town specifically, and to still meet people and hear from people who I knew when I was a child, and or teachers or things like that, or friends of my parents, and for them to be, following my career and being excited, especially for this movie, is really awesome. It's to have that feeling of community sort of carried on through all these years.
With you growing up in that town, it must have been hard to make a documentary about how it's fallen over the years.
Yeah, it wasn't my, if things were going positive, I probably wouldn't have made a documentary, but it felt like this needed to be talked about a bit. Um, and it did come from a sense of nostalgia and grief, personally, where I think for me, that's how I've dealt with certain things over the years, is by making movies about them. And this felt like the right thing to do, and a slight, even a bit of therapy for me to sort of figure this out through a movie, figure out my feelings and my conflicting feelings through making a movie, and through the voiceover in the movie and things like that. And it was hard for sure to get that personal, but with the help of friends and colleagues, and the people in town and my family being on board, we got through it, and I feel quite happy about where it went, and I feel a sense of peace about about the town and my relationship with it now as well. And so it's good for sure.
What were your family like? Were they excited that you would be making a documentary? Were they, like you said, they were on board, so I assume they were supportive, but were they hesitant about it? Did they think that it was a lost cause, or did they have hope?
Yeah, I think for my family, it was more a sense of the movie started out very much about Markdale, and that's how I originally wanted to make it. But as I got further into the filming and I realized that the real crux of the story was my relationship with my dad and my grandfather, and seeing this through three generations of men and talking about that was the most important part of the story. And that took some getting used to for them, I think, and it was a long process of being transparent with them and talking to them about it and trying to encourage them to open up more to me and to go deeper in interviews. And they did. They never really were too hesitant about it. You could tell it was scary for them, but ultimately they always said yes when I wanted to keep filming more interviews or do filming more scenes and things like that. And so that was really special, and to have them on board with me, because things like that don't happen traditionally around here.
And was there anything that you learned about the town that you had previously not learned before?
Um, yeah, I think what I learned was the biggest thing I learned was just how resilient a town can be, and how special it is once people start speaking out, and how these grassroots movements can make a difference when people start going to council meetings and asking questions, and pushing the town more and the council more to make these changes and help the town. And I think that's what I learned. I think there was such a feeling of hopelessness 10 years ago, and I learned that with some newer people coming in, but some people who had been here already, once they sort of banded together, they were able to do some amazing things. And that was probably the biggest thing I learned.
Have you always wanted to make like a movie about the town?
I have wanted to make something about the town for years, for many years, because there was a curiosity originally of, why did I leave this town? And, seeing friends of mine start families and have their careers going by the time they were like 23 or something. And here I am at college and trying to make it in the film industry. And it's such a long grind to get to where you want to be. And sometimes it doesn't work out to where you want to be. So there was this curiosity of why couldn't have I just stayed back here and settled down, and in this, because I would come back from anytime I come back from working in the city and visit my parents or something, I felt an immense sense of calm and peace, being around the town and being in the country, and just so sort of relaxed, and things were just slowed down so much, which was really nice, to get away from that super busy city. So that was the initial idea. And then seeing the decline of the town over the years, I was more and more inspired to maybe make something, because it was such a common problem many rural towns were going through. And the real starting point was around when the school was almost closed, and you started to see this town really struggling. That's where it felt like the right time to make a movie about it.
So the film was presented in a black and white format. What was the
Mhm.
purpose behind this? Was there anything specific?
Yeah, it always, for some reason, it was always in my head to be black and white. I shot some 16 millimeter development early on with my grandfather, and but it would have been difficult to do a whole documentary on film. But I loved that feeling I got when I was watching just footage of my grandpa driving around town and things like that, and seeing the town in black and white. It just sort of transported me back to this time when my dad and grandpa were growing up. And I thought I wanted to convey that feeling of these sort of timeless images, because black and white feels like it could be, in any time in the past. And I really liked that. I liked the idea of of having these timeless feeling images with these themes of nostalgia and loss, but also with showing progress and changes, things that you wouldn't necessarily see in black and white. I wanted to juxtapose that and have, further on in the movie, new people coming into town and new changes happening. And I thought that would be interesting to see in black and white as well. So yeah, it had been from the beginning. I think it was in my head to be black and white.
What do you want people to take away from watching this?
There's a lot of things for sure. I hope people are able to take away a lot of things, but I think the big one is changes and how we deal with changes personally and as a community. And I hope that people see contrast between my family dealing with these changes as well as the town, and just sort of figuring out how to deal with these changes and move forward with the future, and not feel too stuck in the past, and try to work together towards a more community oriented, accepting future, for this place. And that it's going to feel different, but that's okay. Let's work together and figure it out. And I think that's the big thing.
Is there anything that you would like to say before we let you go?
Um, uh, Let me think. I mean, yeah, not really. No, not much to say. I think you covered it well, and
Yeah.
I just hope people can watch the movie April 29th to May 9th, and from there, just keep your ears open for it. Hopefully, it'll go into some other festivals and things like that.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, thank you for talking with me. It's been a pleasure, and
Thank you.
congratulations again.
Thanks. Have a good one.